let's not sugarcoat it, with there being up to 4 prime accesses and 4 prime vault unsealed a year, there is probably more prime weapons in this game now for the whole of 2019 than there was actual weapons if it wasn't for this massive collection of glowing yellow weaponry here. If it wasn't for the cover weapons, this entire list would be prime stuff, and let's be honest, I don't really like adding prime things to it because I've only really done this once, and the last one is going to end where this list is going to start. So let's jump straight into it at number 5 with the Artemis Bohr. Now, yes, this is Ivara Prime's ability, but this was my number 1 when Ivara first came out. It was my number 1 weapon of that year because it worked so well. So I had to start this off. The only reason this is only 5 weapons, if this was 10, a top 10 weapons of 2019, this would be number 10. It had to be on the list somewhere because Artemis Bohr, you can go invisible. It is a stealth-based weapon. I mean, does anything else need to be said? The amount of arrows that it shoots, the fact that it is stealthy, it can do a lot of damage. Once Ivara herself is actually at level 30, it will do a lot of damage. Up until then, it's kind of okay. Once you get her to 30 and you throw some former into it, then it starts to become a really good weapon. We're not going to talk about builds on this, but come on. It had to be in here because you can use Prowl, which you can use Prowl with any bow, but then you use her 4th ability, Artemis Bohr, and you summon a bow that can, well, technically the Cernos Prime would have done exactly the same thing. It does. It wasn't a weapon that actually it could have been a weapon when I made her number 1 a few years ago, but yeah, it had to be in here. I just love Artemis Bohr to kind of a weird extent, and running around with it is just so much fun. It had to be in here. At number 4 is the pennant, with its blueprint available from the, well, this is arguable. It's said in the blueprint that it drops from boarding a Grenier galleon in Railjack. But people keep telling me that they get it from asteroid captains, like asteroid base captains. I said in the video about this, I didn't like it because the speed buff on this for heavy attacks does stack. It's good for crowd control if you use nothing but heavy attacks with this weapon. It is not really that good for quick attacks, but as long as you do heavy attacks, this thing is actually, considering the heavy damage to it, is it literally says the damage is 1200 versus the normal kind of damage it does. It has a slam attack of 1000, the slam radial damage is 1000, the slam radius is 8 meters. It is a really good, heavy hitting, two-handed Nakana. As long as you continuously do nothing but heavy attacks with it. It is good. The speed bonus will kick in. It will start to do it. It actually has that weird, as you do a slide attack or a heavy attack, it like throws a pulse out that's kind of like the Tatsu's snakes that shoot out, but I just personally prefer the Tatsu to this, but this was still an amazingly good melee weapon. I just said I didn't like it because I prefer the Tatsu. That's all it came down to. The only thing that stops me from using this all the time is the fact that I prefer quick melee over heavy melee, so I just don't use this. I would rather use the Tatsu, but if it wasn't for the fact the Tatsu was there, I would be using this all the time because this was a really good melee weapon. Coming in at number 3. This came with Gauze originally, the eltra. Oh, this thing shoots rockets. It's Gauze's signature weapon, laying down a path of destruction. Reloads are faster. while sprinting. In Gauze's hands, it's even more faster. Doesn't even make sense. It's even faster, but yeah, this thing was a lot of fun to actually use. I would love to do one of these for for frames, but let's be honest, I think there might have been 4 or 5 frames, 3 frames released in total, ignoring primes, so that wouldn't really work. But, well, it would, but it would be a top 3, and it would be every frame that was released this year. It could have been 4, I can't really remember offhand. Anyway, this thing came with Gauze. It is... At first, I didn't particularly like this thing, but then after you've used it for a small amount of time and you realise it is an amazing crit-based weapon, because it has a 32% crit chance, 2.8 times crit multiplier. It only does impact damage, but it has a whole radial attack which does puncture and slash, so try to avoid putting punch through on this, and you have yourself a weapon that is great for crowd control, shoots a nice distance, I'm not going to say a long distance, reloads pretty quickly, has kind of an automatic firing to it. The only real downside I found to this thing is, well, it was faster in Gauze's hands. If it worked with everybody else, like it did with Gauze, this thing would have been probably higher up on this list because it was an amazing weapon. But, that being said, it was never going to get higher than it was anyway, for 2 reasons. And the first of those comes in at number 2. It's the Fullman. I'm sorry, but any weapon that comes with a silencer on the end and works just like the Sonicor, and the Catch Moon, nearly forgot the name of it there. I have it wrote down as Mooncatcher, which is actually, I could be getting those 2 backwards. I named mine the opposite to what the actual thing was called, but anyway. And then you have a secondary fire mode that takes the silencer off and turns it into a full auto, so you have the short range, high damage, because come on, it does 100 impact with 400 electrical. It has a 30% crit chance with a 2.2 times crit multiplier. It has more status than the eltra does. It was just better in every single way. I loved this thing too in quite... If it wasn't for the fact that you had to activate secondary mode to take the silencer off, I would probably have retired the primaries that I have been using for this, but it would have made no difference because of what's in first place. But this thing was, it came with Wisp, it's Wisp's signature primary weapon, and the mode to switch between the stealthy primary mode, which is the Catch Moon style thing, that does a lot of damage and is silent. Upon taking it off, it becomes an auto rifle, it has much better range, doesn't really have as much crit or deal as much damage, but it has an accuracy of 111.1. It was just... I loved this thing. It was an amazing weapon and would probably have been number 1 because of the way that it works, the fact it has the stealthy primary fire with the full auto secondary if you take that end off, and if you are using Wisp, the switching mode is slightly quicker. I don't know, there isn't really a perk to using Wisp with this, but Wisp herself, probably my favourite frame of the year, who came with probably my favourite weapon of the year. If it wasn't for one thing, honourable mention of course going to the Shadow. This probably would have been on this list if it wasn't for the fact you need to build the dry dock, then construct your railjack through that whole quest, then complete all of the railjack missions for Earth, upgrading your ship to level 2, completing Saturn, upgrading it to level 3 while doing the Veil, finding the sentient ships, completing, smashing the crystal with the pennant, I nearly said pennant, that was number 4 weapon, the paracesis, which you have to complete a quest to get, then you can do the error quest to get the blueprint for it, then you have to form the parts from the sentient ships that aren't always there in the Veil, then you can finally build it. I'm putting this as an honourable mention because the shakur, it's better than the Fulman, it's better than the eltra, it's better than the pennant, it's better than the Artemis Bohr, it's probably better than what I have in number 1 if we're being brutally honest about this. It is an amazingly good weapon, but I can't say it's too new with Artemis Bohr on there, but it is. It is too new, it is not accessible by enough people to allow this to actually be on the list. If it was a top 10, it would have probably been at number 5. Only at number 5 because it's not accessible by enough people yet. Give it a few more months, it will probably be one of the best weapons, most used in the game. It is really good, but for now, it's too new, it's too hard to get a hold of, and it just has to be an honourable mention because it was probably the best weapon of 2019. If it wasn't for that one thing we've still yet to get to, which would be number 1 weapon of 2019, the Kuva shakur. Depending on which frame you used to create your Kuva Lich, depended on the elemental combo or single element, 50% crit chance, 2.3 times crit multiplier, 260 impact. The rounds have a radial attack of, it's only 50 puncture, 36 blast, and then the elemental bonus that you come with can be added to these, but it also has blast of 20 and a range of 2.7. This thing, it does have a slow reload. It also has a 27% status chance, meaning that this is probably one of the easiest to crit build and status build, but it is just an insane crit monster. It is... This weapon was nuts. At first, like a lot of weapons, you kind of spend so long leveling it up, by the time you've leveled it up, you can't really be bothered to put a build on it. This, like all the Kuva weapons, suffered the same problem. I leveled this up like everybody else had to get it to its max rank of 40, which is one of the reasons it is in number 1. You have to former this thing 5 times, which means you can build this in any way you want to. Everything will fit. It has a maximum mod capacity of, what is that, 80? 40 points. If you put a catalyst in it, doubled. It's nuts. Just the mod capacity of this thing is insane. All Kuva weapons are the same. You have to former them 5 times to get them to 40. But with the addition of Exilus slots where you can throw terminal velocity, which increases the projectile speed of this, and, well, any weapon you actually do that to, yeah, point strike in here, 125% crit chance. Throw an Argon Scope on top, you have yourself a weapon that will red crit for, I think mine only had about 8,000 corrosive on it, with 538.3 radiation, which was its base element, but that's only with a 23% or 25% bonus. That can go up to 60% bonus, so the radiation can actually go up on mine. Hopefully, one day, maybe, if I ever get round to actually finding a better one, but get a radiation one of these, a blast one of these. Doesn't really matter what elemental combo yours happens to have. A toxin one would probably be better. Just a 60% toxin one. Depends again upon what you actually want build-wise on it, but the weapon itself, the only downside I found to this is the cloud of smoke that it shoots while firing does tend to block your view quite a bit. Quite a lot, actually, let's be brutally honest about this. And once you get around that and you realise it does this, this thing actually headshots for an insane amount of damage pretty much every round, and this is coming from somebody who isn't really that good at landing those headshots, so yeah, this one actually took me by surprise. It was when I came back to it and actually started to play with the build on it after leveling up some other stuff. I realised this was actually really good and figured out why everyone was saying, yeah, this is a really good weapon. Find a ribbon for it that will add damage, and crit would probably be better if you had a crit and damage ribbon for this. And you are talking about a weapon that is just, I'm not going to say overpowered, because it's not. There are weapons that do a lot more, but it has such a nice crit chance and crit multiplier to it. This thing was very powerful, which is one of the only reasons it ended up in number 1. There are lots of other Kuva weapons that people prefer over this, but for me, the Kuva shakur was the best of the Kuva weapons for primaries anyway, and probably the best weapon of the year. Do you disagree with my list? Let me know in the comment section below, and let me know what your top 5 weapons of 2019 would be. We'll leave this off here for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.